I'll start recording. Happy Monday. This is CIS 1501. This is a somewhat new course. 7 years ago was a new course. So it's essentially CIS 150, but taught in Python for students in the data science program. So they added a 1 to it. Most of our courses are three digits. So sure, whatever. Computer Science 1 for data scientists. So we're covering all of the intro to computer science sort of topics taught in Python because that's a great language for data science. This way you don't have to learn C++ because that's no fun. I mean, it's a great language, it's fine, but it's not a very beginner-friendly language. It's 4 credit hours. We meet Monday and Wednesday for lecture. Here for now, I'll see if we can get a better room later once they have time to worry about other problems. And then Monday afternoon, right after this class, we go over to HPEC 1190, which is a computer lab, which is over that way, I think. So if you're not familiar with it, I'll show you at the end of class. I'll take you over there. We'll do our labs every week. If we can't log into the computers because the network's down, there's no lab today. But if by the time we're done now, we walk over there, if it's online, we'll have a lab. We'll find out at 2 because I don't know. They've been working on this since Sunday, apparently. I used to do IT operations, so I feel really bad for these folks. That's a really bad time to have an outage, and everyone is mad at them, which we should be, right? This is ridiculous. But, it's okay. We'll make it work. Hi, I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. Eric Chernesky. I'm a lecturer, not a professor. There's 2 different tracks. It's a whole story here. If you call me professor, I might say I'm not a professor because I like to be pedantic about it. But the university doesn't allow me to use that title until I've taught here for 12 years and I ask them nicely and file a bunch of paperwork. So I like to point it out that I'm treated differently. That's all. I don't care. Whatever you're comfortable with is great. You can call me Eric. I still feel like I'm a young person, even though I'm 36. I've been teaching for 12 years now. Like when I started teaching, I was really young. And I still feel really young, but I'm an old person now. But you can call me Eric. I'm perfectly fine. Holler at me anytime. This is your class, so please stop me, interrupt me, ask me to say something again here. If I just talk the entire time and I'm the only one talking, it's really boring. I promise. I get bored of hearing myself talk, which is weird because I do it for a living, but it's okay. So stop me anytime. This is my email address. When you email me, don't use the Canvas email option because it goes to my non-priority inbox because my phone says, hey, you got an email from Canvas, and all of those get filtered because Canvas sends way too many emails. You'll find out eventually, and then you can turn them off. But if you just send it to me directly, then it comes to my priority inbox, and I'll be like, oh, hey, somebody has a question. So email's great. This is my cell phone. I have a phone number on campus, but I never use it. Like I've not, in the 7 years I've been teaching here, ever used it. So please don't. Just use my cell phone. It's easy. You can call me. You can text me. I like texting because I'm a millennial. I'm okay with phone calls, but texting is just easier. So I like texting. That's great. I do have an office. It's actually a shared office space in the CIS building, which is that one. It's this brick building here with no classrooms in it, which is weird. It's just offices and a lab. Sure. Eventually it'll get renovated and they might put classroom space in there. It's on the 5-year plan or something, whatever. So it's over there. I'm going to hang out there. I have a class just before this one on Mondays and Wednesdays. So before that class, about 10 to 10:55 or so, I'll be hanging out over there if you want to meet me in person. And then after this class on Wednesdays, I'll go back over there and hang out for a little while. So one of the things teachers are supposed to have is office hours for folks to drop in and ask questions. So got a couple hours you can meet. If those times don't work for you, which is likely because you have a schedule, I can meet virtually by appointment. We're pretty good at using Zoom, or I like Discord myself, whatever you prefer. It's great. We can meet other times by appointment. My schedule is generally pretty flexible. I just need some notice, right? Like, don't say, hey, I need to meet in like 30 minutes from now. That's not cool, right? But like, hey, can we meet tomorrow at this time or this time? I'm like, yeah, I can probably do that. So I'll be flexible. So this is the course description. Yeah, come on in. Yes. 1501. Yep. You got the right place. Yeah, happy Monday. This is fun without the internet. This was a copy paste from the catalog. Not very interesting. I'm sure you probably read it. I hope you read it. Do you read the descriptions of classes before you sign up for them, or you're just like, hey, I have to take this class, I'm going to take it anyway? Either one's okay. All right, sure. Program learning goals. So all of the classes in a given program or major generally will map towards these goals. There's like 3 of them or something like that, that you're supposed to learn by the end of the program. I'm sure you all care much about that. And I'm sure you looked at the program goals before signing up for the program. Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely. 100%. Specific course objectives. So no matter who teaches this course, which has only been me ever, because I started the course for them in 2016, but these sorts of things get assessed and we track it. This is part of our accreditation process so that our programs can be accredited. We have to measure these sorts of things no matter who teaches them. For other classes with lots of sections, it's more interesting. If it's just me, it's less interesting. And turns out if I get rated based on how well you folks do on these things, and I'm the one who scores you, what's going to happen? So I mean, that's a whole other story here. I'll go off on tangents a lot, I'm sorry. I have 7 kids at home and I drink coffee literally nonstop. From the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep, I'm drinking coffee. So slow me down anytime. This is me trying to talk slow. So I'll do my best. Holler at me anytime. At the end of the semester, you'll have an opportunity and you'll be reminded over and over and over and over and over until you do it. To take the end of semester survey. They're anonymous surveys you take of the class, which is a whole other can of worms because we realize that people who teach hard classes get rated worse than people who teach easy classes. No one likes their calculus teachers because calculus is hard. Sure, whatever, it's a stupid system. But one of the comments someone left me, which I'm a little proud of and also a little embarrassed. They said, Eric is like a squirrel with an adrenaline shot. Okay, so I've taken that to heart. I'm trying to slow down a little bit. I'm a very excitable person. I love coding, I love programming, and I like talking. Go figure. That's kind of why I do this for a living. So, but slow me down anytime because if it's not clear to you, it's not clear to your neighbor, and you're helping your neighbor. You're helping your friend out because it's not clear to them either, and you're just the brave one who wants to ask the question. Okay, I've been doing this for 16 years now or so. So a lot of things in my head are like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Turns out if this is your first semester learning, it might not be obvious. It probably is not obvious, right? So I might go through it faster because it makes sense in my head. Just shout at me, right? Be like, hey, then can you go over it again? Can you tell me again? Happy to do that. Like, ideally, you're paying money to have someone help you with the material. Anyone can go buy a book and read it on their own, right? Go for it. But you're paying money to have someone help you learn it. I don't love the word teach because like I'm explaining things and you're trying them, you're practicing them, you're learning them yourself. Sure, you can call it teaching, but like I'm here to help you. That's my goal, is to show you the material, give you examples, give you exercises to practice those examples, give you things to do even more practice, give you projects to solve so you can practice these sorts of things, and then eventually I've had enough school that they trust me to give you a letter grade. It's kind of a weird process. Higher ed is a weird place. In primary, secondary school, right? Elementary, middle school, high school, teachers have to go learn how to teach to be certified as a teacher. In college, they're like, hey, if you have a master's degree, you know this well enough, you can teach. I've never had a college level class on how to teach things. But sure, they kind of assume I'll just do the same thing that people did for me when I was in school, and it must work because we keep pumping out people with degrees. So obviously the system works. Sure. So I've taken some class, not like a college level, but workshops and seminars and all sorts of things to learn about how to teach, and I like doing it. Always look open to improvements. Right? No one is perfect at anything, so I teach much differently than I did 12 years ago. I've been trying to adapt and change and things like that, but it's okay. It's going to be a little different, and that's part of the fun of going to college is everyone is going to teach a little differently. So you'll get lots of different experiences with some really, really, really intelligent people who suck at teaching. I'll be honest, right? Like if you get paid to research and write grants and fund these sorts of things, your passion is probably not teaching. Your passion is research and finding new cutting edge things, which is amazing. This is a good thing. You just kind of teach on the side. So whatever, right? It's all good. So, wow, that was a little rabbit hole there. So these things we'll get to. It probably doesn't make any sense until we've learned about some of them, and it's just full of jargon and technical terms. So I'm not even going to read them to you. Is that okay? Later, when Canvas is online, I'll post it in Canvas because unlike you, who are super prepared and do everything ahead of time, I waited till Sunday afternoon to post my stuff in Canvas, and it was not working. So I couldn't post the syllabus. I'm sorry. I should have been a little more prepared, headed up earlier. That's my bad. It's been a week. So last week was a week. So that's it. We'll get there. All right. Tools, technology, cool things. So our textbook for the class is actually a website. It's an online interactive textbook called a zybook. The bad thing is they charge you money for it for access to a website. The good thing is it's really cool. You can actually write Python code in the browser and try things as it explains it to you. It's fantastic. So I'm a big fan of it. They used to be cheaper, and then they got bought by one of the big publishers, Wiley, and they're like, hey, we can jack up our prices now. Sorry. So it's $89. It's not outrageous, but like it's still $89 for access to a website, which is stupid. So I'm sorry, but ideally it's worth it. It's not a $200 textbook. So it's better than the bad thing we're used to. It's still not great, but it's a good website. So you go to this website, you plug in this book code, and it should get you access to it. You can print the chapters to a PDF if you want. Honestly, I don't think it's worth your time. Like anything you want to learn about Python, you can go Google. Here, what's cool about the website here is it gives you those online interactive things. Once you print it to a PDF, there's no more button to click on, right? Because it's a PDF. So, if you want to save it, go for it. Totally up to you. You bought it, you might as well save it here, but they make you do it one chapter at a time to make it hard. And sure, whatever. So that's our main textbook. There's all sorts of other resources for Python. There's tons of free tutorials and courses and YouTube videos and things out there for Python. Python is a fantastic language, a great ecosystem, tons of people working in it all the time. Lots of stuff out there. But this will help keep us focused on here's the topic, here's examples, let's practice, this sort of thing. Generally, my goal is to give you different examples from the book. So when I talk about a topic, I'll give you things that are not in the book so that you can hear it from me one way, you can see it in the book another way, you can have your lab exercise for a third way, you can do the homework for a fourth way, whatever, you can go find a YouTube video for a fifth way, and hopefully by 3, 4, 5 times, you've got it in your head. If you remember it just because I said it, you folks are amazing. Like, I don't have the mental capacity to do that. That's not how I learn. Like, most people learn through repetition. They do it, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it. Sure. So that's generally the process. So you will get lots of practice. And ideally, that's good. So my general rule of thumb here is the only way to get good at coding is by writing code. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? The only way to get good at a sport is by playing the sport. You can read about it all you want. You can watch videos all about it all you want. You can study it all you want. But you're not going to get better till you actually do it. That sort of thing. So you'll be sick of writing Python by the end of the semester. I'm sorry, we have a whole second semester if you're continuing on with me next winter, assuming they don't fire me. Fine. Being a lecturer is weird with job security. But another story, I'm sorry. I just like to point things out. So we'll get a lot of practice, and ideally we'll be comfortable writing Python by the end. Right? So the tools we're going to use GitHub. The desktop client is my preference. PyCharm is our development environment. We're going to write Python in this PyCharm tool and run it and debug it and do all sorts of cool things. It's phenomenal. The tool does a gazillion things, and we really only do 5 of those gazillion. So it's going to look overwhelming. I'll show you what the tool looks like. It does so many cool things. We're like at this step here, though, right? We don't need this professional gazillion bells and whistles here. So we're just going to take it slow, and that's okay. There's a lot of stuff it does. So I'll show you the 5 buttons we need. Everything else you can ignore for now. You can play with it if you want, right? Go for it. Lots of cool things we can do. So the GitHub desktop client is a tool used by GitHub, which is a hosting or cloud service provider of the Git source control tool. Git is the most widely used source control tool in the industry. This is how software developers and engineers collaborate with code. They keep their code in a shared location that everyone on a team can work on, that sort of thing. It's a very complex tool started by our friend Linus Torvald, the founder of Linux, who's actually a bit of a jerk, but he's a genius. So some people give him a pass on that. Other people are like, no, you still can't be a jerk if you're a genius. That's generally the camp I'm in, but he's done some cool things. So maybe I don't know. That's a whole other story. You can take other classes and learn about ethics and those sorts of things. But Git is the source control tool. GitHub is the cloud service provider that says, hey, I'll give you a cloud service so you can have your Git repositories out in the cloud, and anyone who has internet access can go get to it, which generally we have internet access. Usually you do, and usually you can get to it on your phone as well. So that's how my backup now is off my phone hotspot. So we'll use that to put all the code we write into the cloud. Now, they give this service away for free for educational use and for open source projects, and they charge an arm and a leg to private businesses who want to do private things and make money off their code. That seems relatively fair. I like that business model. I take advantage of it. And of course, like any, it's a bad analogy. Don't take it too far, but your first hit's free. They want to get you started using it early in your career so that you keep using it. And when you go work at companies, you're like, hey, we should pay for this amazing tool, right? That sort of thing. So again, take that as you will. So we'll use that. We'll go through that. That is generally going to be our first lab, but if we don't have internet, that's really hard to do. Doing all of this off your phone hotspot is awful. So we'll see. If it needs to slow down, it slows down a little, and we'll pick it back up later. And then PyCharm, this is the community edition. It's free for educational use and open source projects. There's a paid version you can get a license for with an EDU email address, because they're like, oh, hey, we'll give you the bells and whistles to students, again, because they want you to pay for the bells and whistles when you're not a student anymore. We don't need the bells and whistles. So don't bother with the fancy one. They'll give you like a 30-day trial, and then it expires, and then you're like, Eric, why can't I write code anymore? Like, well, you got to install the community one. So it's okay. It's a pretty quick install. So those are the tools we use. We'll get into using them. I'll show you a quick demo today. I think we've got a little bit of time today still to do that. And if we get to lab and things work, fantastic. If we get to lab and there's still no internet, we can't log into the computers. You could use a laptop, but then off of hotspots, it's not great. And downloading to like, we'll just probably skip it if there's no internet. And we'll figure it out. So TBD. All right, what everyone seems to care about, how you get your grade in the class, because grades are super important, right? Unfortunately, they sort of are, that sort of thing. If you're looking to do internships, which I recommend everyone do, I know that's hard if you have a life and responsibilities and you can't take an entire summer off to work. I get it, it's hard. But ideally, we have time to do an internship. Some companies will filter internship applications based on GPA, which sucks, but they have to have some sort of filter. That's a pretty quick one. So like Ford Motor Company, when they look for interns, won't take anyone with less than a 3.5. That's just their flat out rule. I've had amazing students apply for internships who are amazing at computer science sort of things, but they got B's and C's in their math class. And Ford's like, no, we won't take you, which pisses me off, because I'm like, hey, look at the GPA for like the things you care about. You're gonna ask them to do math? No. Then why do you care about their math GPA? But that, again, another story. So there's a school just down the street there, Henry Ford College, that teaches calculus. You got to take a lot of calculus. Turns out, just a pro tip for you, if you get a C or better, we will transfer that credit here, but the GPA doesn't transfer. So your GPA from U of M Dearborn only has the classes you took at U of M Dearborn. Right? I failed Calc 2 the first time I took it at OCC. I had to take it the second time. I barely got a B. A B, sure. Great. I didn't want to like risk getting a C. Like I would have transferred with a C or better to do it. But that GPA didn't show up on my transcript here. Cool, right? So that's a pro tip. You're going to take a lot of calculus. That can be hard if you need full-time staff. Sure, that's all sorts of things. So take it as you will. So how you get your grade for this class? Again, rabbit trails, I'm sorry. I'll go off on tangents. Just holler at me. I'll come on back. The Zybooks website will track your participation and doing the exercises. You get 10% of your overall grade in the class for doing it. Like for reading your textbook, essentially, you get 10% of your grade. It's basically participation points. Now, you're going to get frustrated and mad at Zybooks and yell at it because it is very, very particular. If you have a space in the wrong spot, it'll say it's not right for your code, which is obnoxious, I get, but it's also a good way to practice some attention to detail. When you're writing software, details matter. Now, if you're writing the next Brick Breaker game or Candy Crush game on your phone, details don't matter as much. Right? But if you're writing software that's used in healthcare, if you're writing software that's used in mobility applications and self-driving cars and other sorts of things, the details kind of matter, right? Like I have an insulin pump in my pocket because I'm a type 1 diabetic. If this thing malfunctions and gives me 10 times the insulin because someone programmed it wrong, I will die, like literally. So it's good that people paid attention to details, so depending on what your software is. So it's good practice. Now, the stuff we're doing is not life-threatening, not mission critical. No one actually cares, but Zybooks will say, no, you got a space for the wrong spot. You don't get the points. Okay. Everyone says it's really frustrating at the end of the semester. I'm sorry it's frustrating, but a little bit of frustration is useful sometimes. So this is my warning in advance. I'm sorry. You'll hate it, but then you'll get through it and you'll be okay. And you get unlimited attempts. So it's not like it cares that you failed it the first time. You can try and try and try and like until you get sick of it. So someone had like 50 attempts one time. And I was like, wow, why didn't you just like ask me for help? And he was like, oh no, I thought I could figure it out myself. And he did after 50 attempts. Like, oh, friend. Generally, my rule of thumb is you should try yourself a good half hour to an hour, maybe 2 hours if you're super stubborn to get something. But if it's not working after an hour, you're just getting mad at yourself. You're getting mad at the assignment. You're getting mad at me because I told you to do this assignment. It's not worth it. Right? Just come and ask. 95% of the time, it takes me like 2 minutes to figure out what went wrong. Sometimes it takes a little longer. And then, sure, I mean, software is hard. That's okay. But I've been doing it long enough, I can look at it and be like, oh, that's your problem. And then you're like, oh, okay, cool. And you can keep moving. Right? For the projects, for the homework, for the assignment, anything, try for a good half hour to an hour. Like it's good practice to try all the different things, try your troubleshooting, learn how to figure things out, solve problems yourself. But then just ask me. Right? The goal is I'm here to help. That's what should happen. Now, if it's on a project that was due, in 2 hours from now, and you're stuck on something, I'm going to be a little frustrated with you because, like, it's due in 2 hours. Why are you asking me now? Right? Like, we've got lots of time to work on these things. Earlier is better, and sure, but I'll still help. But I have class before this one, so like, if you wait to the very last minute to answer me a question, I just physically can't answer it. So I'll be in my office hanging out like at 10 a.m. Right? Come and ask me a question. If it's due at 12:30 p.m. and you ask me at 10 a.m., it could go badly, right? There's a chance I might not be able to solve it. Most of the things I can, but that's a risk, just FYI. All right, so the labs, when we meet Monday for labs, so Zybooks has its own labs called Zylabs. Those are not the labs we do every week. So the labs we do when we meet every week are separate. That's another 10% of your score. The goal is everyone walks out of lab with it done. Now, some people don't finish. That's okay. Some people finish in half an hour and leave. That's great. Some people try for half an hour and they're like, hey, I've had a crappy Monday. I just want to go home. Sure, perfectly fine. They're not due until the next week. So you've got all week to do them, but that's the time set aside where I'm there in person. I can walk around the room and see your screen without having to set up a Zoom screen share or anything like that and see what's going on. So that's the dedicated time. If you don't come to lab, that's okay. I don't care. I'll be honest. Like, you get to pick your schedule. You're all adults. You can figure that out for yourself. If you turn it in on time, great. We're happy. Yeah.
Where are these labs?
So they'll be in Canvas. So it'll say, hey, do this thing, and I'll have to walk you through the process. You put your code in GitHub, you turn in the link to GitHub in Canvas, and I can score it. But it's a programming exercise. Write some code to do this. Generally what we've been talking about for that week. So it's just more exercises. But my labs tend to be a little more open-ended. My project's a little more open-ended, like, hey, accomplish this. Where like the Zylab is like, hey, do this step, and then do this step, and then do this step, and then do this step. I'm not going to give you all those details because in the real world, you don't get all the details necessarily. You get, here's the problem to solve. Right? You figure it out. You're the developer, right? You're the data scientist. You figure out how to solve these problems, answer these questions. So having some practice with, let me take a big problem and break it down and solve problems is good, is worthwhile. And generally, when it comes to computer science, and that's sort of the topic of our class, right? It's computer science fundamentals, computer science 1. The hard part is not writing Python code. The hard part is getting a complex problem and breaking it down into small enough steps that a stupid computer can solve it. Because computers will do exactly what we tell them to do. They only do what we tell them to do. So if we can't break it down into small enough steps, you can't tell the computer, hey, I want to know, some silly example, like how much fuel is wasted because we don't send full flights from here to there, and what if we delayed our flights for this time to have a full flight in the afternoon, and then the return, whatever, right? All sorts of interesting, fun stuff we can solve and make better in the world. You don't get the steps. Now, depending on the organization you go and work at, generally you have senior level people with lots of experience who know how to do these sorts of things, will break it down for you and be like, hey, junior developer, you're new here, can you just do these couple tasks for me? That's common, but not always happening, right? So we need to learn to take a problem and solve it ourselves. So the hard part of programming is solving problems. It's a very creative process. And everyone solves problems differently. There's not just one right solution here, right? We can go 3 different steps, 3 different ways to get to the same destination. As long as you get to the destination, that's what matters. You solve the problem. Now, later in computer science, you'll learn some things are faster, some things are slower. Generally, the faster way is better, right? Because we want things fast. And it's less waste of resources and that sort of thing. Like every time you do a search on ChatGPT, it like costs a bunch of money because a bunch of things has to happen and a bunch of processing happen. Sure, that's interesting. So that's like the technical science side of things to solve. But the general, how do I solve a big problem, is the creative bit. It's a really fun industry. lots of interesting problems to solve. I was just showing my son, I'm amused by things on Twitter or X a lot, and people were joking about the new cargo ships that have sails. Like, we figured out now that wind power is useful when you're sailing ships. I'm pretty sure we had sails like millennia ago, right? But it's a difficult problem when you're a giant cargo ship, and it was an engineering problem to solve, sure. But like, hey, we've come full circle now. Now we can put sails on our ships, but we use less gas or less fuel, and these sorts of things are good. But like, just it's kind of funny. That's all. All right. So labs, our lab exercises, right? So whether or not we have one this week, great. We'll figure it out, but we'll do every Monday after class. We'll head over to the lab. That's our chance to work. Again, if you want to come, that's our time. If you don't come to lab and you ask me lots of questions and want to meet with me lots of times to talk about the lab, I'm going to be a little frustrated with you. I'll still help you the first couple times. But like, if every week you don't come to lab, you're like, hey, can we meet Friday afternoon to talk about the lab? Eventually, I'll say no. Is that okay? Is that fair? That's our time. But if you're busy, you're tired, you had a bad day, you don't want to come, that's okay. It's up to you. I don't record lab sessions because I'm not like talking. I'll give the assignment and then I'll walk around the room and help people. I'll record the lecture portions and I'll get those posted for you so you can come back to them later. Or if you're sick, please don't come if you're sick. Please. Like, just rest, get better. The stuff can usually wait. Projects are due when they're due, and we have like 2 weeks to do all the projects. So ideally, if you're sick, it's not the end of the world. Don't be like me and wait till the last day to do something. What is that? Do what I say, not what I do. It feels awful saying that up here, but sure, don't wait till the last day, that sort of thing. But yeah, don't come if you're sick. I'll try, this laptop may or may not work with streaming. I'm in between laptops, have to get a nicer one at some point. Usually I'll try and stream on Twitch because it amuses me. I think it's fun. That comment about me being a squirrel with an adrenaline shot got me thinking, like, I could record this because I watch a lot of stuff on Twitch, usually games, but there's other educational content on Twitch. It was big. There's actually a really cool chemistry prof out of Florida who would do chemistry lectures on Twitch, which was interesting to me because I'm a weirdo. I was like, hey, this is fun. I haven't done chemistry in years. So I would go watch his stuff, but he was a fun guy. So there's more than just games out on Twitch. I was like, I could do this. So I streamed my Thursday night class on Twitch because Thursday nights in the winter was really rough, especially with snow and things like that. And people are like, I can't make it to class. What did you talk about? I'm like, I don't really want to go like take a bunch of notes for you. But like, if I stream it, it's like there, you can go watch it. Great. And then there's like a one-click export to YouTube button to get it out on YouTube, which just stays forever because Twitch only keeps it for 45 days. And someone complained to me when they took the final exam that one of the like earlier class sessions wasn't on Twitch anymore. Like, buddy, lost it. If you're going back to the videos here for the final exam, that's rough. Sure, whatever. All right, we have projects. We have 4 individual projects we're going to work on throughout the semester, every other week, essentially, starting next week for the first 2/3. So this is a bigger thing for you to solve. I'll still help you with it, but I'm not going to solve it. When it comes to the labs, like if you're that stuck, I will solve it for you. That's okay. Labs are participation points. That's your chance to say, did I understand what we talked about, and can I do an example with it, right? The goal is everyone gets 100% on labs, right? It's participation points, essentially. Now, that doesn't mean you just don't do them and you get the answers and you turn them, like that's not useful. Again, the point is you're practicing and you're learning and you're trying these things. If you can do the Zybook exercises, if you can do the labs, you can probably do the projects. But if you're skipping those two and you try to jump right to the projects, it will not go well for you. Right? We're like building our skills. It's this idea of scaffolding. You do a little thing and you do the next little thing and the next little thing. But if you don't have those 2 layers down here, you can't climb up to this layer. Right? Sure. We have 1 exam. I'm not fond of exams because when I went out in industry, no one ever said, hey, Eric, take this test. Go figure. There's no tests in industry. So I think exams are stupid. And I don't care if you can memorize things. I've never been told at a job that I needed to solve a problem and I had to do it off the top of my head. I can't go look online. In fact, they would tell me, go look online. Go use the things you find online, please. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. You don't need to waste your time doing this if someone else has solved that problem. Take that piece and build on it, right? So it's open book, open notes, open internet, not open neighbor, right? You don't get to work with someone else just because it's online, but like use your resources. You don't have to memorize all the different things here because testing if someone can memorize something is not very useful. It's embarrassing. We're still doing this in higher ed. Like the people who've studied learning and these sorts of things like have told all of us testing to see if someone memorized it is worthless. I mean, it's some measure, sure, but like that doesn't, I care if you can write code and write working code to solve problems. So there's one exam. They look at me funny if I don't have exams because we're not technically a project-based class. Some of your higher level classes is going to be project-based and they have no exams at all. They're just based on the project, which is phenomenal. Like your capstone class with Dr. Maxim is amazing. You get some really cool products and things you can like show off and talk about in interviews and really cool stuff. Like at some point, go and check out the senior design fair. I forget what they call it here. Like you can see all the projects the senior groups have done. It's super cool. All right, so one exam. I'll give you last year's exam because I have to rewrite them. Not that you folks would do it, but some people post exams on websites like chegg.com or Course Hero or those sorts of things, and they say we should rewrite them every year or every semester. Fine, whatever. But you'll get a feel for what my questions look like. Okay, so low stress is the goal here. Right? I don't know if you've noticed that. The goal is not stress things because we don't need the stress. Right? We want to know if I have the skills, and if I don't have the skills, what do I need to do to build those skills? Okay. That being said, I've been told, I asked some juniors and seniors around the lab, like, what advice would you give to people starting off? And their super honest advice was, if it's not going well for you, it's okay to quit. Just because you picked this major doesn't mean you have to be stuck with it. They had friends who like just failed a class and then failed a class and like struggled through and got B's or got C's, like struggled to get D's in classes and they were miserable. They're like, do you really want to do this for a living? You hate this. And they're like, I don't know, I picked it. Like, it's okay. It's okay to change your mind. You're not locked in. But if you want to do it, generally you can get it done. Right? You're at college. You probably all have the aptitude. You can be successful. But it's okay to change your mind. Anyway, and then the final project, that's the bulk of your score. You can't pass the class without the final project. That's intentional. This is the last third of class we're working on. And you're welcome to do this one in pairs. Group experiences are great. I know forced groups are not great, but it's in the real world, you don't necessarily get to pick who you work with, your coworkers. I mean, you like quit the company and go work somewhere else is about the choice you have most of the time. So I'm not going to force you into pairs. I mean, if you want to, if you know someone, great. If you want to do it yourself, great. Totally up to you. Other classes, you'll have to do group work. Right? I don't have to inflict it upon you now, but it's generally a good experience. And when it comes to something creative like coding and problem solving, being able to talk through your idea with another human is super useful. Like, hey, I think we should do this. And they're like, oh no, what if we did this instead? And you think, oh, well, I just had another idea. Like it's very useful. It's actually really lonely to be the only developer doing something. Right? Working with a team is phenomenal because generally you get a better product. That's sort of the goal. You learn from each other, which is awesome. There's I forget who said it. Someone really smart said something about if you're the smartest one in the room, you should leave the room. Right? Like if you're not learning from the other people you're working with, you could be, but you should be, which is great. So I've always enjoyed that when I worked in industry. Working with really smart people is amazing. Right? When I was the top person on my team at the healthcare company, I hated it because people like I had a coworker who worked on a different team, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard him talking. Like, oh, let's just wait till Eric gets in and ask him." And I show up because I'm a late person. I hate mornings. Mornings are the worst, but I'm always up till like 2 a.m. because the late nights are my favorite. Sure. Like I didn't like that. It wasn't fun. So sure. So I went to a different place. That was a long story. So final project, last third of the semester. You're welcome to work in pairs on it. It's not going to be amazing because this is our first semester learning to code, likely for all of you. But it'll be something we can talk about, something we can kind of show off, or you can like show some interest in. Having these sorts of like final projects, things you can talk about, are great on interviews. Like being able to show you understand a problem well enough to solve it. Those sorts of things are a lot of fun. So we'll get into that. So that's how you earn your grade in the class. Now this is weighted, right? So just because a project is worth 10 points and a lab is worth 10 points, doesn't mean it's worth the same percentage, right? Of all the projects, they make up 30% of your score. So generally the projects gain in points. Like your first project will be 10 points, your next project will be 12 points, the next one will be 15 points, the next one will be 20 points. Generally, don't hold me to it. But the reason is you don't get to forget anything. Just like math class, just because you learned algebra doesn't mean you're done with it when you get to calculus. Someone told me once calculus was just a mean trick to make sure you knew algebra or something like that. It sounded funny because, yeah, like you just build on those skills. So you keep using the things before. We don't, just because it's a new topic, all the other stuff still applies. All right, this grid here should be standard. I got this off the syllabus template, so it should be the same everywhere. You get an A minus, whatever, right, for these percentages here. Generally, I round. like 93.1 is not a 94, but like 93.5 and up, right? That rounds. So it should be pretty standard everywhere. Then our tentative course outline, our schedule. This is the plan for the next 16 weeks. Holy cow, we're looking at the holidays already. So this week, Intro to Python, GitHub, PyCharm, Chapter 1 in Zybooks. Now, for the Zybooks, I would love it if you stayed on track and did it each week. For me to go in and run the report to see, hey, how much percentage of the chapter did they complete, and to give you a score on that, it's a lot of work for me. I don't want to do that. Is that okay to say? So as long as you get the Zybooks done by the end of the semester, when I run the report, I'll never know. I'll never care, really. I do care, because if you're getting behind, it just makes everything harder, right? And then you don't want to have 15 weeks of Zybooks exercises to do during final exam week when you have other final exams to focus on. So don't do that to yourself, right? So pretend like they're due at the end of every week. But it's okay if they slip a little, right? Eventually you'll get caught up, should. If you're struggling with it, let me know. But this is good practice. It's a good exercise. Lots of fun things for you to go through and do. All right, next week, Monday, is Labor Day, right? So no class Labor Day, no lab Labor Day. Take the day off. Don't do labor on or celebrate labor. I forget why we have Labor Day. Sure, celebrate labor. Right? Sadly, like all the companies are still open, like food service companies, like people who labor. Grocery stores are still open. Like they don't get the day off that we're supposed to celebrate their labor. Okay, that's another story. We'll get into chapter 2. So we can probably actually get started on chapter 2 on Wednesday. Chapter 1 is not big. And then we can finish it up next Wednesday. And then it's basically one chapter a week. Exceptions and modules are really small, so we'll do both of them in that same week. It's not too bad. So 3 projects every other week, and then we'll break for the midterm. I don't want you to have a project at the same time as the midterm. We'll come back from midterms, and then we'll do the last individual project, and then we'll pick up the final project mid-November. And then on our final exam slot, our time slot, we will do presentation. So you will present your final project, run your code for the class, show them how you solved that problem, show them some pretty charts and graphs and things that we're going to draw. It's interesting. You can do some really cool stuff. And what's fun about that is almost everyone does it differently, because it's a creative process of how do I solve problems? What steps did I come up with to solve this problem? As long as we got to the same destination, that's all that matters, right? So we can see how other people do things. And when it comes to presenting data, that's all. We can't even like scratch the surface of that in this class here, but telling a story with data is sort of like the dream here. So how do I take data and show that information? Because just raw numbers are really dull. No one wants to see just a chart of raw numbers. That's awful, right? Your accountant might, just sure. But to use data in a way that gives information and is meaningful and useful, you have to present it somehow. And this idea is you tell a story with it. That's the, what do we want to call it? So the way that you present it shows it to be a certain way. Now, that also means it's really easy to lie with data. And people do this all the time. And it drives me crazy, especially as someone who understands this sort of thing. So I don't mean to pick on the news much, but I'm going to pick on the news here because they do this all the time. When they present a story, like, hey, by the way, look how much the economy, look how well the economy is doing. Here's the inflation rate. Here's the inflation rate this year. Here's it this year. And they make a chart here, but they take out like, you know, if the inflation was at 9% and now it's at 7%, they take out 6% of the bar here. And they're like, hey, look, it dropped 5 inches on a chart. And you're like, no, put it, you know, start at 0 on your axis here. And you're like, oh, it dropped like this much. So that sort of thing. So you can manipulate data. You can lie with data very easily when you present it. Please don't do that. Like, have some integrity. But sure, everyone likes to tell a story with their data, which is not always lying. So presidents love doing this sort of thing. They're like, hey, look how many jobs were created. And all of them do it. I'm not bashing one part or the other. They all do it. Like, look how many jobs were created compared to last time. Or look how much the economy has grown compared to last time. So turns out, if you have like 2% growth year after year after year after year after year, even if it's just flat 2%, the 2% from this year is orders of magnitudes larger than the 2% from 10 years ago. Because 2% growth of 10 years ago was a smaller number, and you've grown and grown and grown and grown. So 2% of a bigger number is bigger. Yeah, we've had more growth. It's still 2%. So people do this all the time, and it irritates me. I'll try not to get all soapboxy about it here. But presenting data to tell a story, Everyone does it, so we want to try and have some integrity, have some ethics around how we do that here. It's not a lie that they've had the largest economic growth ever, but you're not telling the entire story. You're not presenting all the facts, right? You're like, hey, sure, okay, you get the idea. So I don't need to keep hammering. I'm sorry. You just got to tell me to shut up. It's really okay. Like if I'm beating someone to death, just tell me. Like it's okay to move on. You're not going to offend me. It's okay. It's the coffee. So this is my Monday drink is actually a pot of coffee and a pot of espresso. I got this cute little espresso mochi pot you make, and I just pour the two together and I bring it with me, and I'm halfway through it now. So and it's one. So it's good stuff. If you have cups, I will share too, by the way, if you bring your own mug. I don't have mugs for you though, I'm sorry. So in the CIS building, I have mugs. There's a couple mugs I keep in the break room there. But all right. Are we okay with the schedule so far, the tentative schedule? Okay. So yeah, questions when we get there, great. Course specific, yeah. Once Canvas is online, I will put it in Canvas. Yeah. This is what was supposed to happen a while ago, and I waited till Sunday afternoon, and then the internet, everything broke. So yeah, as soon as it's available, I can still email things. So if you want to email me, I will send it to you over email if you'd like it earlier than when Canvas turns on. They keep saying like any minute now, but they've been saying that since Sunday afternoon at like 1 p.m. So I don't know what any minute means anymore.
I know my schedule is. Oh yeah, by midnight.
Yep. Well, and then at midnight they're like, "Here's the schedule for the Ann Arbor classes."
Like, yeah, here's that.
Yep. I posted. I'm public on Twitter. It's Eric Chaneski's my handle, and I was like, "Oh, thanks for giving us Dearborn schedule." Like, I'm gonna trash them because they didn't help us. Like, they deserve that shade. So, and it really doesn't matter to me because it's not going to come back to me. Like, hey, you made fun of our IT people. Yes, I did. Yes, they sucked. So anyway, I will own that. That's okay. Right. So course-specific policies. I'm very big on academic integrity because if you cheat, you probably didn't learn the thing, and then when you go get a job because you have a degree that you cheated to get, you're going to suck at your job and you're going to get fired, and that company will say, hey, U of M Dearborn does a terrible job teaching people. We're not going to hire other graduates from U of M Dearborn. It's bad for all of us if cheaters get degrees, right? I'm very specific. Like, cheaters should not get degrees. So the most I can do in my class, because that's the only thing I have control over, is fail you. So if you cheat, you will fail the class. There is no 0 on the assignment. There's no try again. There's no can I do something. Like, no, if you cheat, you fail. You're going to retake it with me because I'm the only one who teaches it. Lucky you. It's just a funny story. This is not very funny. It's actually depressing. But 8 people cheated on the final exam, and I failed them all. Turns out you take this sequence of classes, and like if you don't pass this class, you can't take the next one. So they all went to the dean. They're like, I can't take my next class here. What am I supposed to do? So they paid me to let them retake it with me in the summer, but they still let them into the next class. Because they're like, you got most of it here, but you cheated on the final and you failed. So you probably know the material well enough. But they had to repay to take the course with me. Just like, so I got paid to fail people, essentially. Just a really perverse incentive. I don't do that on purpose. Like that was just a funny story that happened. But you should not cheat here because the goal is you get the work done. Like, I understand there's stress and there's pressure to do well in classes, and I hate that. I hate that environment is fostered in academia, right? But I get it. So all of my stuff is supposed to be low stress, right? You've got 2 weeks to ask me questions about projects. You've got open book, open notes, open internet exams. You've got a final project to work a month on, right? The pressure to cheat should be minimal in my class is the best I can do, right? Every semester in 12 years, I've had to fail someone for cheating, despite all of this. And it drives me nuts. Like, I get upset when people cheat because I have to do a bunch of paperwork. Like, I have to document all sorts of things, fill out all sorts of forms, send them over to the dean, have conversations with people, and I hate doing it. It pisses me off, and I get upset at home, and my wife gets upset because I'm upset, and she's like, just let it go. I'm like, why did they cheat? Like, all they had to do was ask. But anyway, sorry, was that a question? So you will go and solve up. So probably not this one, but like, hey, write a program that solves a maze. There's solutions out there to solve mazes. I know that. I'm not stupid. But like, the process of going through and going step by step by step and practicing it yourself helps you understand this tool and technique we're using, right? There's only so many examples or like projects you can solve with this technique. They're all out there online. You can go ask ChatGPT for solutions. It will give you solutions. So, and we'll get to that in just a second here. But you are welcome to use your sources. Yeah, that's what we do in industry. But this is academia. Pretend it's like an English paper. You can't take one giant quotation and say, here's my paper on Shakespeare that someone else wrote with one quote. It doesn't work, right? You can take, hey, here's an idea someone had about this Shakespeare play and use that in your paper and add original work to it, right? And that's what we do in industry. We take pieces that are built and use that piece here and then add original effort to it. If we just took all of their code and did it ourselves, it's not it. Like, what was it, Facebook Threads? It was basically Twitter for a minute there. But like, they had to do a little bit of work at least to change the logos or something, like, I don't, whatever. But that sort of thing, like, you're gonna add effort to it. So the same idea of English paper rules, yeah.
You recommend like getting a laptop, some sort of experience. Right now, I'm at my desktop. So I don't know. It's like whether to invest to a laptop or resources.
So we've got labs with computers that generally have all the resources you need. If you don't mind walking to the lab and using the lab, cool. Some people like being able to follow along on a laptop while I show examples or while other teachers show examples. They like following along. Sometimes we talk too fast and you just like can't follow along in the example. So it kind of is going to depend on your class, what exercises you do, what stuff you can get done in the lab or not. I love desktop computers. They last longer, they're more powerful, they're on all the way superior to a laptop, except I get funny looks when I carry my desktop tower with me. I've done it before. I brought in my desktop because I like, sure. But people look at you funny and then like, you don't want it to like bump too much in your car and sure. So yeah, I think you'll probably be okay if you don't mind that inconvenience of not having something immediate to like type on.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had a case of keyboard.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't look like it need math.
So I'm not super familiar with the cyber program. You can go talk, I think Dr. Ma, I think she's the main contact for the cyber program. You could ask her if she recommends laptop or specific software, that sort of thing. Kind of depends on what they use. So all of our tools will run on Mac. I don't think they run on iPad. It's not the same OS, right? It's a different OS than Mac OS. I think so. I'm not a Mac person. I don't like Macs, but that's my own failing. Some people love them, and that's great. So it turns out if you control your ecosystem, you control your hardware and all your devices in your operating system, it's really easy to make it work right. Windows doesn't own the hardware usually, unless you go buy a Surface. They have the operating system, and then other people make the hardware and all sorts of fun things here. It's like, and then people trash them because it doesn't work well. Well, they didn't give you the hardware. So anyway, yeah, it's probably a personal preference, I would bet. All right, so when someone asks you to see your code because they just want to see how you did it, tell them to get lost, right? They don't want to just see how you did it. They want to copy paste your answer, right? You are welcome to talk, right? I love when people work together, right? Talk about it in English. If you start writing code down or copying code, we've gone too far. They're like, hey, I'm going to solve this maze solving problem by, I'm going to try all the up directions first, and I'll go right, and I'll go left. Sure, like describe your process, perfectly fine. I'm okay with that, right? You're welcome to do that. I've got a Discord server. You can hop in on Discord and talk about things. That's great. If you start posting code, I'm going to give you funny looks, right? We don't need to share the code. We can share ideas, right? The process of taking ideas and turning it into code is part of the thing that we're learning. So giving someone your code, if they turn in your code, now you've both cheated because you both turned in the same thing, right? So just don't do it. Okay? That'll be great. Don't use Chegg. Chegg is the worst website ever. They're getting sued. I'm super happy, but they're getting sued by Pearson, who I also hate because Pearson's awful. I don't know who I want to win. So sure, but Chegg is awful. They have a tutoring service that you're allowed to pay for, and they say, don't post your homework to the tutors. But everyone gives their homework to the tutors, and then you get back answers for projects. Like that's literally what they do. They have the ability, if I give them an assignment or an exam, to not let that get posted for 24 hours. They're like, oh, sure, we'll make sure it doesn't get posted during your exam window. After that, F you, Eric. Well, I'm going to let my students let their customers post these questions and their expert tutors answer them because that's how they make their money. If they keep it off for 24 hours, they can keep it off forever. it takes me so much time, energy, and effort to have stuff taken down from Chegg. I have to get my dean to write a letter anytime I want Chegg to take something down, because they're like, no, we're not going to talk to you, Eric. It has to come from the dean. So it wastes my time, it wastes my dean's time to get these takedown notices put up there, and it pisses me off. So just don't use Chegg. Right? It's awful. They're terrible people. Again, just don't cheat. Right? We've got resources. We have an engineering student success center, I forget what it's called here, over in HPEC that has tutors. Like someone that the school pays who won't do your homework for you, but they'll help you learn it. Like, hey, let's talk about the thing you did in class. We've got last year we had a Python tutor. I think we still have them. I don't think they graduated yet. I thought they were a junior. I should double check. But we used to have a Python tutor. We probably still do. I'll check on that and see. Email's down though, so it's a little hard to check on these things. Anyway, don't do it. Right? Now, I'm aware that there are ChatGPT, we call them AI tools. AI is a bit of a stretch there. It's a large language model. If you want to get pedantic here, it's not artificial intelligence. Sure, that's okay. Go, your senior year, you can take more things and learn about it, and then you can argue with people too. Sometimes people like to argue. I enjoy arguing sometimes. I probably shouldn't argue it. I don't know. Like, no one wins in online arguments, right? You rarely ever change someone's mind. Like someone comes in with this idea, so you come in with an idea, and you just like talk at each other, and no one ever like understands or has a conversation, because you're not arguing to listen, you're just arguing to prove your point, and you don't care what their point is because they're obviously wrong and they're stupid, and you're the smartest person out there. So, okay, sorry, I'm guilty of that too. So I have to like tone that down to myself. Oh, but ChatGPT, so UMich has our own version of it, which is the version 4, which is the latest and greatest, best I can tell, as of last month or something. I'm sure next month there'll be 5 or whatever here. Super interesting. But you can use the UMich version for free. You don't have to pay OpenAI for it, which is great, because you can get the version 3 or 3.5 for free, but not version whatever. So use the UMich one. Go for it. It's a fantastic tool. What we don't do with it is say, hey, ChatGPT, solve my homework. Right? You can say, hey, I'm having trouble with this. I'm getting an error with this. I need it's actually pretty interesting to be able to talk to it with the language, which is really fun. Like, hey, can you explain this code to me? It's good at that sort of thing, amazingly. Like somehow it does it. This large language model stuff trained on code is super cool. That being said, it may or may not kill itself because it was trained off of Stack Overflow, which used to be the most common website for developers to go and post problems that they're having, errors that they're running into, and the community, just out of the goodness of their heart, would say, hey, I solved the problem for you, here's an answer, which is amazing. Like the software development community is amazing in that people would just spend their free time answering questions for other people they didn't even know, building out a library of information for anyone to go and access publicly. It's amazing. But now that ChatGPT and other AI sort of tools, whatever, quote AI, air quotes sound really dumb, like AI, but I feel awful when I do them. I just feel stupid. Like, as people use that more, it's not searchable. There's no record of it. It won't be part of the next training for the next large language model. So as Stack Overflow goes down, there's less stuff to train off of, especially for all the newer languages and newer features and newer tools. We're not going to have that library there to train data off of. And what's going to happen to the ad? Like, that's an interesting problem that will have to be solved when we get there. I don't know what that looks like. And thanks to Europe and the GDPR privacy rules, you can't just put in all the training data or all the questions people asked without people's permission and that sort of thing. And then removing your individual data out of a large language model training set, best I can tell, is impossible. I don't know how it's done. I don't think it can be done. Again, I'm not an expert at it, but they've run into problems here because you can't remove your personal data from a trained AI model, because you can't go back to the model and say, where's your source here? If it was Eric Januski, remove it, please. Because part of GDPR rules says you can request your data be removed from the system at any time. If you can't do that in the model, crap. There's all sorts of interesting penalties. They will fine you lots of money. So very interesting times we're living in. But UMich has a tool. So anyway, UMich has a tool. Please use it. It's really good at giving examples. Like, hey, give me some practice problems for writing Python code to do X, Y, and Z. It will give you problems up the wazoo because it's got all sorts of stuff in its training database. And then you can go solve it, and then you can ask for its solution, and you can see if you're right or wrong. It's good at that sort of thing. So it's may or may not be the future of education. I've got friends I used to work with who are now at Khan Academy working on their AI side of things. So Khan Academy is this learning platform, if you're not familiar with it. And what they're looking at is how do they leverage these AI sort of tools to be teacher's probably the wrong word, but like coach. So students will go through material, and if they're not sure about it, they can ask questions of the large language model and get good answers back. And we can assess them, and like their platform already, my kids use it at home, will like reinforce. So if you get a bunch of questions wrong, it comes back to the same topic. Once you've gotten the questions right, then you start moving on, and like eventually you come back to some of these questions. It's like circular learning process. We can hook that up with AI and these sorts of things. Like we can give everyone a good education very cheaply and very personalized. Like you don't have to sit there in a class of 30 students, and if you didn't understand it, the teacher moves on anyway. You can ask more questions of your AI teacher, that sort of thing, like and get better answers and practice and practice and practice until you get it, and then move on to the material. It's a very so. Anyway, super interesting space. Go talk to our friends at the College of Health and Human Services or Educate. I forget what it's called here, but we teach people how to teach over there. So it's really cool. All right, anyway, so if you use ChatGPT, it's a website. It's not like, hey, here's a particular page I hit that you can cite as a source, like with an English paper. Hey, I got it off of this article. Here's the website for it. It's just chatgpt.com, whatever this website is, right? So if you're going to cite it, you have to cite the prompt that you used. So what did I ask it is what you need to cite. And then here's the bit here that I got back out. Now, we're not going to put that bit in quotes because you can't put random quote marks in Python. Python gets really upset. And we'll get into all that when we get into Python. But you're welcome to use it. Please do. Like, this is what we're going to do in the real world when you get out into the industry. People will leverage this to become more efficient. Right? We're going to use all of our tools to make us faster and better developers, better programmers. Right? That being said, if we don't learn the basics and understand what it's giving us and understand how to read it and troubleshoot it and work with it, if it doesn't give us the right answer or 100% answer exactly what we need, if you don't have the skills to add to it and build it and tweak it and modify it, you're out of luck. Right? So we can't only use the tool. We have to learn how to use the tool to help us build things. And that's sort of the goal here with what we're doing. So I think we can get there, and I think that'll be the future of development. So you don't have to do the slow, boring work. You can do the interesting, creative, problem-solving part here and just get pieces and puzzles and put them together here. And now we have a cool solution to a cool problem. All right. Again, like English paper style, you can't turn in one giant quotation. So you can't take the entire project, give it to ChatGPT, and give me the answer and say, hey, here's the prompt I used. Like that won't fly. Like that will be cheating. That's okay. But if you want to say, hey, I will ask ChatGPT for help with this piece of the problem here, right? Hey, Chat, how do I do this bit? Great. When we get to projects, I'll give you some examples, those sorts of things here, right? Because it will give you solutions. We're at an intro level coding class, right? It can solve all of our problems. I'm aware of that, right? It can. But once you get further and further and further on, when it can't solve all those problems, so my friend Dr. Baugh teaches the algorithms class. It can't solve all of his algorithm problems. But if you only used that tool to get through the first two classes and you take his class and it doesn't give you a full answer, you're screwed. Right? You will not pass that class because it's just not good enough to solve it. They're really bad at math. So he's added all sorts of silly math things into his projects because the answer you get from ChatGPT will be wrong, and he can tell very quickly that someone just copy pasted in from ChatGPT because it's doing the wrong thing. Right? I'm not like, he's not trying to catch people or trap people, but like to help them do their own work is sort of the goal here, right? Ideally, you're taking college classes because you want to learn something, not just because you get a piece of paper at the end that hopefully helps you get a job. I get that's a goal too. Like I understand that. That's what it is. That's the world. But ideally, you've learned the things too, so you have the skills to actually be successful in that role. And with software development, like at no other point in the world have we been able to take an idea and release it to the world so fast. Now that we have web applications, we have mobile applications, we have desktop things, you can go from idea to solution and release it to the world in a day if you have an idea that will change the world. Right? We've got the ability to do these things and to build tools to do amazing things if we want. Right? It's super cool, and all you have to do is come up with the idea. I just saw, because I like memes and sorts of things like that. We put someone on the moon in 1969. Someone landed on the moon, was able to walk on the moon. Do you know what year someone thought of putting wheels on luggage so you don't have to carry your luggage at the airport? You know what year that was? 1987. So we can put someone on the moon And 18 years later, someone's like, why don't I put wheels on this thing so I don't have to carry it? So like, there's ideas that people just haven't had yet that are simple, that will revolutionary. Like no one carries their luggage anymore. And it's nice and easy because we have wheels. So these sorts of things, like, and especially with AI sort of tools, it's so much easier to take your idea and run with it. You don't need to hire a team of 20 developers to do this sort of thing. If you've got the idea, you just go, and it's awesome. So I'm super excited to be alive right now. Like, I think what we're going to see come out in the next decade or so is going to be phenomenal as these tools get better and people can just take their ideas and go with it. Because people are creative. Like, people really are. We have cool ideas. It's hard to take an idea and turn it into a product all the time. So I think enabling this pipeline is going to be really cool. Anyway, that was a weird tangent. Sorry. Late projects I generally don't take because I go over the solutions. So I think there's still value in me showing how I solve a problem in like the big homework problems, because I will try and take a different approach sometimes than you thought of. Right? Maybe you did the exact same way in your board, I'm sorry. But generally, the way I solve problems, like I'm trying to illustrate how you can go about solving problems, the process of solving problems. So I go over homework project solutions in class. So they'll all be due at 12:30 p.m., 2 weeks after they're assigned, and I'll go over the answer. So we'll spend, they usually take me less than half an hour to solve, right? I've been doing it for 15 years. Don't feel bad if it takes you more than half an hour, right? It's not a competition here, but like, so don't feel like, okay. So if something comes up, let me know. I can be flexible if you let me know ahead of time. Obviously, if you get super sick, don't come, or we'll work it out after the fact and you get better. Like, you're not going to fail the class because you got sick with the flu and missed a week. Like, we'll figure it out, okay? The food pantry's out here. If you need assistance here, if you've taken any sort of psychology classes, there's a cool guy named Maslow. He has this hierarchy of needs. Turns out it's really hard to focus on high-level things like creative problem solving and learning if you don't have food and shelter. Like, that's just a human thing. So this is one thing they can offer here. So take advantage of that. For the COVID policy, that's still in our syllabus template. And then university-wide policies, they're all links in Canvas once Canvas turns on. You can go see all these other things here. The safety statement, we've got a standard safety policy. There's alerts you should sign up for. You might automatically got alerted here. I've got 7 kids at home, and I'm a marathon runner. If we get an alert, I'm gone. I have no responsibility for you. I just want to give you a fair warning there. It's not like high school or middle school or elementary where the teacher's in charge of taking care of students. I'm out of here, okay? It's not funny, I'm sorry, but like, okay, that's what it is, right? If we have to lock the door and hide, we'll do those sorts of things, but I go through it. I hate it, I'm sorry. I laugh at very inappropriate things because that's how I process, it turns out. So my wife's sibling is going into social work, wants to be a therapist. Like, I've had some fun conversations with her. She's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't laugh at these things. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So sorry. Apologies. All right. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Awesome. So we got about 10 minutes left. So let me show you the 5 buttons you need in PyCharm. And then if we have internet, which is not back yet, by 2, we'll do our lab. If not, we'll wait until 2 weeks, and it's okay. We'll make it work. It won't be the end of the world to miss that. Yeah, there's still no internet. So it's unlikely we'll do lab at 2. What a day. What a day. All right. So when you install PyCharm and you start it off here, you get a black box, which has a bunch of buttons to click on. Actually, I think mine's going to open the previous project. Yep. So if you don't have a previous project, let me go and close mine. Come on, close project. Okay. So what you get is this box. You get a bunch of options. For our homework, for our labs, exercises, most of the time we're going to start new projects. For the larger projects, you might come back to them and open them, and you can open them from your recent list, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to do a new project. It says, where do you want to put it? Now, when we get to GitHub, this will be important. You have to put it in a very specific folder. For now, it doesn't matter because we haven't got there yet. So it wants to put it in your folder called PyCharm projects. Sure, if you want to change the name of your project, you change this part here. So we'll call this like Lab 0 or something. Right? Eventually, we'll get there. Now, Python has... Oh, shoot, you might have to install Python first. I don't remember if PyCharm comes with it. It's been a little while since I had to install it. I'll give you the link. It's python.org. I'll show you the download later. This idea with Python is they can create virtual environments. So when Python is installed on your computer to run all the things Python does, it goes in one location. generally when you're doing development work, you might be using other libraries and other things from online and other sources and these sorts of things. You don't always want to put them in your system's install of Python because it can do weird things. Python lets you shoot yourself in the foot and overwrite things, and weird stuff can happen. So they encourage you to make a virtual environment, which is essentially a copy of Python that you then get to play with and add all your libraries to and all your fun tools and those sorts of things. So that's what a virtual environment is essentially a copy of Python so that you don't use the system's install, because other things on your computer might actually use Python. Right? I mean, not everything, but depending on what you do. So this new environment's great. Sure, it's generally pretty quick. If you have a slow computer, you might want to skip it, and you can just use the existing. Sure, but generally the new one's fine. If it's too slow, we'll help you figure it out. It says, okay, what do you want to use? So I've got Python 3.9, 3.10 installed. I think we're out at 3.11 now. What is it? Python.org. What version are we at now? Download. Yeah, we're at 3.11 now. So it's good to patch and be up to date. Anything 3 will be fine. So I'm not too stressed there. So it says, okay, I'll go find it from this version here. Sure, perfectly fine. We'll go make the virtual environment. I like this little checkbox here that says create a main PY welcome script. This gives me some starter code and a starter file I'm going to use. You don't have to check the box, but it makes life easier. Generally, my common phrase is good developers are lazy, in that you want to be efficiently lazy. You don't want to have to do a bunch of work you don't need to do. You want to be efficient. So if it makes a file for me, great, I save some steps. So I'm going to say create. It goes, oh, it's even downloading Python for me. Look at that, yeah. I didn't think we had to download Python. I think it's able to grab it itself. So PyCharm's pretty sweet. It's a pretty quick download. Come on. I thought it was pretty, I'm on my phone Wi-Fi, I forgot. Should not have done that. Just thinking about it. Oh yeah, I wasn't even looking. There it is. It popped up and I was too busy talking. That happens a lot. Maybe. Once it's downloaded once, it won't be slow every time because it'll have it. Sorry. This is a relatively new laptop. My other one died. And I don't actually want to use this one for everything because it's not my favorite one. But I haven't bought a new one yet.
This one, is that okay for you to do?
Yeah. So it won't do all the things we want it to do when we get to classes. PyCharm has a lot of really cool bells and whistles that writes code for us. The stuff I think is boring. But yeah, VS Code's great. Perfectly fine for basically everything except that little bit. So PyCharm's really good at debugging too. I think the VS Code debugger is okay for Python. I haven't done too much with it, but yeah, whatever you like, that's fine. The Python files are the same. All right, cool. So now on the left side, you see this is the project view. You see it's a folder. A project is a folder. So here's my users, ET-CHR1, PyCharm projects lab 0. That's the folder I put this in. Inside of that is this virtual environment. Don't mess with that. And here's my main.py file, .py for Python. Right? Inside of here is a bunch of stuff. It says, hey, anything with this pound sign, it's not a hashtag, it's a pound sign. I'm old enough to know that. Oh, goodness. Why is it not zooming? Hang on. Let me go back to my settings. I installed the latest version and now it's upset with me. Let's zoom. It's in here somewhere. Keynotes. Here we go. Zoom. I think it's this one, right? Yeah, control. Zoom in IDE. Oh, I want the mouse. Okay, let's do. Come on. Wow, I don't know what that was. Sorry. Holy cow, that's fun. All right, I'll come back and figure out the zoom later. Thought that was the setting, but hopefully that's not super small. So you can do all these things. There's the run button, the play button up here. You can click the button here. You can right click on your file and say run, or you can go up to the menu here and go to run, or run, whichever. So like anything you want to do, there's going to be 3 ways to do it or more. Some developers like to brag that they never take their hands off the keyboard because there's keyboard shortcuts for everything. I know a couple of the keyboard shortcuts, like F10 for run. Sure. Or no, Shift F10. Oops. Shift F10 will run. I don't care that much. I'm going to use my mouse because I'm comfortable with it. And that's great. No one has ever said, I don't have a job because I touch my mouse, which is dumb, right? But people like to brag about the weirdest things. So Sure. So to run, I like right-click run. That's easy for me. It says, hi, PyCharm. Now, none of this is going to make a lot of sense right now. That's okay. So I'm just going to go grab it all and delete it. I'm going to say print hello world. So some time ago, whoever decided when you teach programming languages, the first thing you should make the computer do is say hello world, which is fun. So in Python, we say print and give it a set parentheses. And then you can use single quotes or double quotes or apostrophes or full quotes. As long as you start with the same and end with the same, Python's cool with it. There are some differences we'll get to later, but for now it's fine. Now I can right-click run, and down here it says hello world. So in PyCharm, the output will show down here. You can go and run this program on your computer if you want. It's a small pane, and what it's actually doing, I can run this command. So it's saying, hey, python.exe. Python is the executable program that runs. Python will go and read a Python file and execute it. So Python generally is considered an interpreted language. It will go and interpret the Python code and run it for you. It's not compiled. Now, parts of Python are compiled. There's a whole complex story. Go take the compiler class if you're interested. Sure, whatever. So you can give Python any Python file, and it will go and run it. That's the idea here. So you make a Python file and say, hey, Python, run this thing, please. Python will go and do those things for you. So if you want, you can go plug this into like your command prompt or your PowerShell, Windows terminal. Yeah, that's right. That's the latest here, which is actually running PowerShell. And I can go paste that in here, and it says, hello world. I get my output. Most people don't run their files like this, right? Because we won't, and that's okay. We have other ways of doing it, those sorts of things. But if you want to do it the hard way, you can. If not, I just like the run button, okay? So that's your very first Python program. Get that up and running. Again, if the internet turns back on in 15 minutes, we can do a lab. If not, we can all say hi, introduce ourselves. My name's Eric. Nice to meet you, so-and-so. We can spend 5 minutes if you don't want to take off right away. Introduce ourselves, and then I'll drink some more coffee. I'll hang out. I have a lab at 4, and I'm hoping the internet turns back on by 4 for that class. So we'll see. I'm gonna hang out anyway. Yeah. For 2001. So generally, since 2016, I've been teaching 1501 and 2001. So computer science 1, computer science 2 for data scientists. Yep. I'm sorry? The class, the lab. Yeah. So far, it's been me. I don't. Not aware of any plans to replace me, but we'll see. There's very little job security as a lecturer because there's no tenure. It doesn't matter to you. It's okay. So, yeah, awesome. So I will post this recording once I get better internet. It's not going to work very well off my phone thing. Again, I'm going to try and record every lecture. I'll stream them if I can because I think it's fun and entertaining here. So you can go back to look at them later. Got questions or concerns? Let me know. If not, I will see you in 15 minutes over at HPEC 1190, and then we'll hang out for a minute or two and go home. Thanks.